Yes.
Here we go. Now, Jim, go ahead and fire it up from Amazon. Let's see if we go.
Well, still waiting for it. Oh, we are live on. Oh, here we go. We are going to go live on Amazon.
We're good? All right. Ladies and gentlemen, it works. Oh, yes. Ladies and gentlemen, beautiful people of planet Earth, welcome to Dealcasters Live. My name is Chris Stone. I'm at Castahead at castahead.net. And the gorgeous gentleman on the right-hand side of your screen, making me almost invisible, Jim Fuse of Fusion Marketing. How are we doing, man?
I'm doing great. It was we had a great conversation before we came on live. So yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, that's a story for another day. But I will tell you this, Jim. We have a couple of legends in the house. And so for those of you who have tuned in here for the first time and you see this title that says Video Podcasting Made Easy, you are in the right place because we are talking to a couple of absolute, if there's a Mount Rushmore of video podcasting, these two dudes have their mugs on it. And no, it's not Willie Nelson, even though that might be what it looks like there up on Mount Rushmore. But we're going to get into that. So if you're joining us on any of the tubes, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Amazon, the place to be really today is Amazon, and we made it easy for you. And the reason why is because these two gentlemen have written a book called Video Podcasting Made Easy. And what better way than to pick up that book than to get this bonus content by grabbing the book over at Amazon called Video Podcasting Made Easy and enjoying the show there as well. So if you're on any other places, you're welcome to stay there. But the easy way to go over and check out the book on Amazon is to go to dealcasters.live, and that'll take you straight to the show. And we've got not only the book in the carousel, but they talk about a lot of stuff that will help you that's available on Amazon in the book and their podcasts. And, oh, yeah, our podcast as well, Jim. So Anyway, Jim, yeah, you mentioned Jennifer Watson in the intro video. There's a couple of other people. I don't know if you noticed our guests today were previous guests on Dealcasters, also featured in that intro video. So it's an honor to have them here for sure.
Definitely. And it's exciting to have them because we haven't had a chance to talk to them in a little while. But I know I enjoyed reading the book. I think it was a really good book and it can definitely help you get started if you've been one of those people that's been afraid to get started. I love the fact that I know I probably shouldn't be saying this, but we all are technically AARP eligible creators.
Speak for yourself, man.
Well, I know you're the young one of the group, but
right.
Kevin actually did a video recently on YouTube talking about starting creation at a more mature age, and I think his YouTube channel has been blowing up. So I want to also maybe find out about that. So I think it's never too late, folks. Get the book, learn, get over your fear of having a camera in front of you. I never thought I'd have a camera in front of me, let alone a microphone.
That's true. So let's, while everyone is piling in here, and again, the chat room's open, and it's not very often that you get two, legends, stalwarts in the industry on a show that you can ask questions of. So if you're on any of the tubes, certainly ask some questions. But without further ado, would you please welcome to Dealcasters two of the most highly recognized live streaming and video experts on the planet and authors of the new #1 international best-selling book, Video Podcasting Made Easy. Please welcome Mr. Ross Brand and Mr. Kevin Kolbe. How are you, gentlemen? Oh,
fantastic.
Yeah. Ross, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, I'm a pro at this.
Yeah.
I was just seeing if you guys surveyed the whole thing and, we're doing all the right producer things. So
hey, I was just gonna take over, so I wasn't gonna tell him. So.
Hey, when I did the 5th anniversary Live Stream Universe event and party, I was on mute for the first 6.5 minutes.
No way.
Oh, wow.
Well, this is a perfect way to start the show because I think, This book, which by the way is available in the Amazon carousel, called Video Podcasting Made Easy, and it's great, and it's an interesting way of doing a book, and we're going to talk about sort of that process, guys. But Ross, what I really liked about it, and maybe you could start us off, and Kevin, just pick up the crumbs that Ross has left you here, but the mindset, like a lot of people get into podcasting, audio and or video, and they get caught up in the mind junk of all the gear. But there's just so much about the mindset of, you're on mute when you first start a video, like you said, or, mistakes happen with live video. And you being someone that has had such a history in live video, talk about the mindset for someone who's getting into video, maybe live and or recorded.
Yeah, you can't take any moment too seriously. I mean, when you're doing live, and this goes whether it's live radio, it's live TV, the show's got to go on. So whether you do the greatest thing in the world or the worst thing in the world, there's a lot more show left. And if there isn't, there'll be another show. So you got to just kind of keep pushing on. Little mistakes and things are going to happen when you're live for 15 minutes, for 5 minutes, or, particularly if you're going live for 45 minutes to an hour or beyond. So you have to accept that. Don't make a big deal out of it. If you can laugh at yourself a little bit, that's okay. Or you just kind of ignore it, or you apologize and move on. It all depends on the circumstance. But the worst thing you can do is feel bad about it and then take away that positive energy that you'd otherwise be sharing with the audience.
I love that. Kevin, what do you think about what Ross had to say, and sort of because I know you have different perspectives as well that you talk about in the book with the mindset of a creator.
Yeah, well, and I'll add to that. Some people may remember Dick Clark and Ed McMahon made a lot of money on a show called Bloopers and Screw Ups and whatever it was on,
right.
and they made a ton of money with the network just showing screw ups and bloopers from other ones. So, there is that. Just start a live stream and just screw up the whole time, and then you can sell it for a lot of money. I think it's never been a better time to create content. I mean, just every day, every month, it gets easier to get into it. And I don't say that like, we don't work hard at it and it's just like anybody can do it. But I do believe that a lot of the things that keep people from doing it, whether it's gear or tech or whatever, it's just those are things that once they start getting over, it's like, oh, okay, nobody died, everybody lived, and this is kind of fun, and I've met people and made a little money. So it's, I love it. I love it.
Yeah, and you said something there. You kind of brushed over it, Kevin, but it's so important too. Is you said we met people. And I always feel like one of the most underrated aspects of podcasting, especially video podcasting, is the ability to meet people and to network with people. I would have never met you two gentlemen if it wasn't for video podcasting. And I thank God I did, because, Jim and I would not be here if it weren't for the two of you. And I mean that wholeheartedly. Kevin, you've taught me tons of stuff on Final Cut Pro. And, a lot of people will say, how did you do this? How'd you do this? And I was like, go to @KevinKolbe on YouTube. That's where I learn. I basically steal everything he's done. And of course, Ross, whole reason why this show exists is because you did one video and showed somebody how to get on Amazon Live. And Jim calls me one day and says, hey, we're Amazon influencers. I'm like, what the heck is that? Do I want to be that? And, the whole reason why we're here. So, guys, we totally appreciate everything that you've done, not just for us, but for the industry. It's really important that people understand, I think, when you start watching videos from people and you start doing all this other stuff, that you don't just wake up like this, right? You have to start with training wheels on the bike and start doing all that. So I know the book is called Video Podcasting Made Easy, but Ross, talk us through kind of, if someone's just maybe interested in audio podcasting and they've maybe even recorded some stuff and maybe they have an RSS feed that's sitting on Libsyn or Captivate or something like that. Well, now it's time. They're like, oh God, I see all this video now. What do I do now? What's the mindset there?
Well, I always just say, just turn on your video camera, your webcam, whatever, and record. Like if you're just doing an audio podcast, you're recording. So why not let the video record too? And then pinpoint a good 30-second or 1 minute clip where you're making that powerful point that you make, or you say that one funny line that you know everybody's going to laugh at, and share that on social and see how you feel putting some video out. And then think about, okay, maybe I should just put the whole video out. And it's okay that my lighting isn't perfect. It's okay that I'm not necessarily always looking at the camera. I'm almost 10 years into this. I still don't look at the camera. And I've done okay for myself.
Sure.
I started out using the built-in camera in my laptop. Now I get it. Like, things have advanced and the baseline has risen a bit. So you probably want to have an external webcam at the minimum, but you really don't need, unless you're selling video production services, your video production doesn't have to be an A plus in order to get on YouTube and play on that platform and have a chance to take advantage of all the opportunities on YouTube. And it's not just YouTube. Spotify has video. And of course, we're on Amazon Live right now. And, you know, we talk about video podcasting a lot of times like it's this new thing. First of all, it's been around through RSS feeds forever, but very few people dove into that. But basically, your show is a video podcast. We just didn't call it that in the beginning, but it's a video podcast. I think I probably did 800, 1,000 shows before I actually called them video podcasts, but they were live streams or recorded videos that I uploaded to YouTube with interviews and doing talk shows. So it's not something that necessarily means that you have to make this big pivot. Just start learning a little bit of video at a time, and as you go along, the quality will raise. But it's really about the conversation and the connection with your audience and opening up those opportunities that exist on video platforms. Even though the conversation and the way you guys approach everything is the heart of what makes Dealcasters Live such a remarkable show, it just wouldn't be the same in terms of your discovery, in terms of your reach, in terms of your ability to brand yourself, in terms of your clips that you share, the reviews you do. There's so many things. Think about everything you do that just wouldn't either be possible or would be diminished if you didn't have video going along with the show.
Yeah, that's a great point, Ross. I mean, I think, you know, and I feel fortunate to have Chris as my partner in the show, because those are things that we didn't start out knowing that, right? It took time. It's that getting 1% better every time you go out and do things. I mean, you know, when Chris and I first started, you know, we were both, you know, wearing the cans and, you know, using different microphones, some of the microphones you talk about in your book. And some of that, it becomes a preference, right? Like some of it was like, oh my gosh, are these in-ear monitors going to work, or am I not going to hear things right? And so you start to experiment, you start to learn. And then companies start to see, hey, these people actually do a pretty good job of talking about things. But I think it is interesting, right? Like, do we really still have just live streaming and podcasting, or is it becoming, as in talk about in your book, video podcasting? And so I don't know which one of you wants to take this question first, because I think you both have previously written books before this one. But what inspired both of you to write Video Podcasting Made Easy? And how did you come up with the approach of recording your conversations?
So I can jump into this history, and then Ross, he can segue into to how we did it this way. So my first book was Live Streaming Made Easy. I love this Made Easy track, and Ross had me on his show, and he asked me live on the air, you know, you think you're going to write another book? And I said, yeah, I think so. And he said, you know what it's going to be about? And I said, yeah, I think I want to do something about video podcasting. And this goes back to sometime late last year, because the last book came out, ironically, about the same time this one did, in August. Off air, he said, hey, just got an idea. Would you want to write it together? And I'm like, I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, that sounds pretty fun. And then from there, we just, you know, it took us a little bit to kind of get the schedules going, and then it's like, at the same time, I didn't think we knew how we might want to do it, but I didn't think neither one of us, I think we wanted to work together and write it together, but it's like neither one of us was fired up about, okay, let me write some and send it to you and you read it and send it back and stuff like that. Because I was saying the other day, and Ross didn't know this, but I wasn't going to read anything he sent me. I was going to say, yeah, it's good, because I trusted him. And then Ross's idea is what to me was the genius idea of actually how we did the book. So I'll yield my part of the floor now to the gentleman from New York.
So thank you, my good friend from the great state of North Carolina,
colleague.
Yes. Okay, so I thought, what if we did this as a video podcast? Essentially, what if we got on mics, on cameras, and, we had a little outline, but nothing too detailed, but just something to follow along, an idea what the chapters would be about, and then just had a conversation as we're walking through the steps of video podcasting, and see how that turns out, and if we've got the content for a book, and if it would read well in conversational style, where each, Ross Brand, this is a video podcast. Kevin Kolbe, yes, it is. Ross Brand. So what do you think? Like, would that work, or would that be too difficult for a reader to get through? And what we did was we took what we had, we put it through AI to kind of filter out the things that either weren't suitable for the narrative, or just, didn't work for what we were trying to do, clean up the grammar and such. And then we looked at it and we said, yeah, this really does work as a conversation. I think we captured what we were intending to get across, and it feels like a conversation. And, nobody's really done a book like this. So what the heck? Let's try it this way. And, maybe the video podcast style of writing a book will be something. I mean, I think there were only really two areas of the book that we actually wrote like a traditional author would be. And that is, Kevin wrote a foreword, and then I wrote an afterword. And those two, I think we each sat down on our keyboard and we typed out like a normal chapter in a book. But the rest of it was all in conversation, and then shaping it a little bit in terms of, tightening it up and cleaning it up so that things were precise and made sense. But I don't think reading this book is a lot different than if you had listened in for a certain amount of time on our conversation. And I'm going to yield the floor back to my the fine gentleman from North Carolina.
Well, I want to add something to that too. And I think, we didn't want to interview each other. I mean, I've had him on my channel and I've been on his many times, but we weren't going to interview each other. We wanted to talk about it. And so I think he nailed it, and hopefully it came across that way in the book. We think it did. It was a conversation we were having. And quite honestly, the recording of it, I think, was far more enjoyable than the editing of the text after it. Because you were just and in fact, because we have everything. And so we would go back and say, was that really what, and so we'd go back and we'd listen to it, and I'd go, oh yeah, that's right. I forgot we were talking about it. And it was so, I don't know how other books are written that way, and it just was enjoyable, but it was really about the conversation two guys were having with the background and the experience. Not that we know everything, but just the background and the experience that we could talk through it. And man, it was a blast doing it that way.
I could tell.
Yeah, that part was so much fun. It really was.
Yeah. I could tell. And here's why I think this concept is genius. Is like, okay, a lot of times when we talk about podcasting, we say, well, we make the rules, right? We don't have like affiliate, like you don't have to end at a certain time because an ad needs to be inserted if unless you have those conversations, like you make the rules, right? And you guys said, well, we want to write this book, but let's do it this way. And nobody's telling you, no, you can't do it that way because that's not how books are written. It's like, screw you, I'm going to write a book and this is how we're going to do it. And it's about video podcasting, so it makes total sense. I love that. And I also love the fact that because I know you guys, or even if somebody doesn't know you personally and maybe they're fans of your videos that you've been putting out for years, subscribe to your communities, whatever. I'm imagining the conversation in my head while I'm reading it. And I think that's in, you guys didn't hide behind the fact that this is how you were, quote unquote, writing the book. You didn't hide behind it. You didn't say, here's the book, and so we're going to have this conversation, and then we're going to bookify it, like make it look like it's some sort of book. You said, no, this is the conversation. This is what we're doing. And then you even said, yeah, and by the way, this is going to be an available video podcast for you to use in the future. I just think that like, at first I was like, wait a minute. This is just a conversation with these guys, that's transcribed. And then as I'm going through it, I'm like, okay, this is brilliant. I really love the concept of it. So really, really well done. It's just, and to your point, I don't think anybody else has done this, or if they've done it, they've bookified it. I don't know.
I love the term bookify.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I like
I
that.
think a lot of people who are like solo writers will dictate into a recorder or something like that if they feel more comfortable getting the material out that way rather than staring at a blank screen, or they're not super comfortable with their own writing as a first draft, or they just think it's faster. But I'm not sure if two people have co-authored a book this way before.
Yeah. And there were several times it was like, we would say, I don't know of a roadmap. There's not like the cheat code we can go and look up on YouTube about how we were doing it. And then there was even a hidden benefit or two in there is when it's all done, now we could release it as an audiobook because we have the conversation.
Right.
And we may have to add, a little here and there. And we could even release it as a YouTube channel or a web series or a course, because now we've done all that. We don't have to go back, even if we just need to re-record an intro or something like that. It's not like we're trying to go back through the whole book and going, okay, when we're in the hosting part, what the heck were we thinking about? We've got those videos.
Yeah.
And even if we needed to add to it, I would say maybe 5% new versus what we have. And even that will sound different and look different than it reads differently. So again, that was all Ross's idea for doing it that way. To quote Forrest Gump, I'm not a smart man, but I hadn't thought about that either. And it was like, dang, dude, what a great idea. So, and again, it made it enjoyable. It just made it enjoyable.
Yeah, I could tell by the way it was written. It really did read like it was you talking, and without the superfluous filler words or whatever. You obviously tweaked it a little bit so that it was easy to read, but at the same time, it almost was like I was there in the room, and you guys were having the conversation. You guys do cover a lot of tech and a lot of gear in the book, and you simplify it, and then at the end of the book you list it all, which is great, especially for those of us who are putting together Amazon Lives and we want to put all of that gear into the carousel. So thank you for doing that. But what I noticed about it is this: the book can be a reference point, not just for the mindset aspect of video podcasting, and some tactical things like using your phone, which I really want to get into, Kevin, on that. But when I looked at the gear, I realized, and I was talking to Jim about this, I think the first mic you brought up was the Samson Q2U. And since the very beginning of Dealcasters, that mic is the mic we talk about. And that is 5 years ago. And now we're here in 2024, and it's still the mic that people talk about. And so, I think the misconception is when you're talking about gear that, it's just, next year it's just going to be outdated. Well, not good gear. And I think that's really what this is a great book for, is to go, okay, a Rode Pod mic is still Kevin Kolbe's favorite mic, and he also likes the Q2U, and he's got this and this and this and this. So I've got a budget of this, and here's where I can start. Was that intentional on your part in terms of the gear that was mentioned?
I mean, I think so. I mean, I have, my attitude toward gear has changed quite a bit over the time. I mean, coming from television, I mean, goodness, there was a budget, but we would overspend. I remember the first time we were going to use a DSLR for a video shoot, and the engineer going, we can't take that out. People are expecting us to have expensive gear. And I'm like, what? And to this date, I've never had never had a client say, well, wait a minute. Now, what camera are you going to use? They don't care.
You're right.
They don't care. And then over time, it's like, I mean, I used to just go, yeah, don't use a webcam. Now it's like, look, if you have to use the built-in camera on your laptop, which isn't the best, but in the scheme of things, who cares to get it out there? And there are some very expensive pieces of gear that are really nice, but not everything has to break the bank. Not everything has to be the newest and the latest. And I think people go into debt and I've got to buy all this because, I'm on YouTube and you can tell when something new's dropped because everybody's talking about it, and I got to get a drone because everybody's got a drone, even though I can't fly it, so I've got to do all that. And then you have this closet full of gear that costs a lot of money and you still haven't recorded anything. And so, yeah, I mean, and I'll share one quick thing too before Russ jumps in, that, I did a video on the Samsungs comparing it to the Rode mic because I had it and I just did it, didn't think much about it. I think it was a year, maybe or two after I did that video, one of the marketing guys from Samsung reached out and said, hey, really appreciate what you said about the mic. And I'm like, what did I say about the mic? And we want to send you a mic just for free. You can have it, play with it, do a video if you want. There's no guarantee. And since then, they've sent me 2 mics just based on that video that I talked about on a mic that's under $70 that is still solid just as much today as it was when it was released. So again, I throw that out saying you never know sometimes where it's going to go beyond just that video or that live stream or that podcast.
Yeah, I think I also wanted people to have a sense. Kevin started probably with a lot more knowledge of gear than I did, but like a sense of the progression.
Mm-hmm.
Like, here's where I started, so you can start here too. Here's where I went to. So if you're open to spending more or you're ready to move up to the next level, let's give you sort of a cheat sheet so you don't have to look at every product under the sun. And also just to acknowledge that, whether somebody's making a transition to a video podcast or they're doing it for the first time of any type of podcast, they're all at different levels in terms of what they know about cameras and microphones, in terms of what their budget is, in terms of what they think they should be spending or not spending or what they need to get. Because to some extent, I mean, do I need this mic? No. But because doing this is a huge part of what I do and it's part of what I love and enjoy and whatever, yes, it's important to me. And I think there's, like you said, the expectation that I'll have a good mic at certain point is there. But I have recommended, I think, the Samson Q2U to hundreds of people. And I have never gotten anybody who said they were unhappy with it.
Yeah.
I've gotten some people say, I thought it would last a lifetime and it didn't, or, this thing doesn't exactly look like the way it looked in the picture. But not one person has gone, boy, this sounds like crap.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks it sounds good. It's what I used the first 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
And you could get that mic for $59 to $79.
Yeah.
And you could use that the rest of your life and be just fine.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the message I wanted to get across is that, like, gear shouldn't stop you from doing this.
Yes.
But hey, if you've got the knowledge and you've got the money and you've got the time, hey, it might be fun for you to learn how to use a mirrorless camera or a DSLR or, play around with a higher level audio interface that also records and works as a mixer as well or whatever. Like, let's just give you the options and you can choose what works for you, but without it ever shaming anybody into the idea that you can't do this because you only have such and such.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people making a fortune online holding a lav mic like this and talking into it. There
Did you start that, Ross?
You
started
that.
That
was
a $19 lav mic. Yeah.
Who I think put the Blue Yeti across the street in the wrong pattern, and they're making a fortune. So, yes, you want to do as well as you can with what you have. And if you have the ability to do more and it feels right, yes, but understand that it's not the be all and end all.
Right.
It's the conversation, it's your relationship to people, and the information and the entertainment and all that. That's what it is. And all these other things, they're like a telephone, you know? I mean, you don't, you know, I'm not going to talk to Kevin today because, you know, I don't have my good telephone.
Yeah, my bag phone is still charging up.
My dial, you know, my old rotary phone isn't quite as good as my, you know, my high quality cell phone. Yeah. So you know what? We're not going to have a conversation because I'm not going to sound as good. That would be ridiculous.
You guys blaze the trail on doing a book like this. You should blaze a trail so the next video podcast you do, you guys join with the big cell phones, you know, like the bag phone, like Kevin was talking about. That'll be like your microphones. You'd be like, you know, welcome to the Kevin and Ross show. You know,
crank this.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I do miss those days of being able to stretch out the 20-foot phone cord from the wall, and then if you could get it untangled in time, you know, and then when it finally got stretched out, it would usually wrap around a block. You know, those were the good old days, weren't they?
Yeah.
Well, but I think it's so important what you guys bring up about the gear, right? We all get gear acquisition syndrome, and I think the problem with especially people just starting is they see folks like us and think that we all started with all this high-end gear, and that's not the case, right? It's like, I remember, I think I had, you know, things I wouldn't suggest to people now, but right, wearing the earbuds that were plugged into my computer that I got with my iPhone, and using my, you know, I might have had a C920 webcam was my camera, and, you know, I was using natural light out the window to give me my lighting when me and Tim first started our show. And so you can go back and see those videos, right? So you can see that progression. But I think I'm going to spend thousands of dollars to start a show, and then all of you saying, well, gosh, I've done 5 shows and nobody's watching yet. And it's like, I just wasted all this money. It's like, you know, none of this happens overnight. I mean, maybe it did for you two, but I know it definitely didn't for me.
No. I mean, I think the point you just made, I think Kevin and I have talked about this. That's the easiest way to feel defeated, is to go out before you've done anything, spend thousands of dollars on gear, and you're all dressed up and you're thinking, I'm at the podcasting elite. It'll be 5 minutes before, you know, YouTube's buzzing, and you do something, you get done, you go, I might not be that good at this. Yeah. Now I've just, you know, it's embarrassing. I've just spent all this money and I'm in my fancy studio, and it's like, get good first and then bring the gear up to meet the level of the content you're doing or what you need. Don't set yourself up that, like, you know, I got to hit a home run on my first at bat, or, you know, I'm going back to the minors.
Well, and you may not even enjoy it. I mean, you know, years ago, I think this will apply. Years ago, I thought, you know, I really want to play golf. And so rather than take lessons, because I'm stubborn, I just went out and bought some clubs. And I just went out. And I did get Golf Magazine, because, you know, what better way to learn how to play golf
than
read a magazine and look at the pictures. And so I went out and I started at the level of suck and got worse.
Nice.
Now, I was very good at hitting my ball on the wrong fairway and playing against people the whole time.
Oh.
And I remember, I'm not proud about this, but I remember the last hole I played, I threw the golf club further than I hit the ball, and I sold the clubs. But my point is like, I didn't try and learn the game. I didn't try and figure out how to get better. I went out and invested in all this stuff that I eventually sold at a loss. And I never enjoyed it. Now, I could slay in putt-putt, but that's a different live stream. But yeah, it's like, use what you've got, get into it, start learning it, figure it out. You may even shift from like, wow, I don't really like interviewing people, but I like doing solo poetry, or what, I mean, whatever it might be. And then go, wow, you know, I can always ramp up gear as needed, or whatever. It's the things that may help you discover your own talents and your gifts and your love for it, before you just start dropping a lot of, you know, money on something that maybe you don't even need to at some point anyway.
but you've already spent
But
$10,000
you-
setting up
yeah,
a studio that's guest friendly.
Oh
With,
yeah.
I got my 4 mics and my 4
Yeah.
chairs and 4 cameras. Oh, I'm not really very good at interviewing,
Yeah.
but you know what? When I do a solo show, everybody seems to love it.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
how quickly can I sell off this gear, the studio?
Yeah, so much of it is developing your voice, putting in the reps. You don't go to the gym one day, come back shredded, and we're all testaments to that. Like it takes years. It's a long game. You want to be successful at this. You have to settle in and start realistically, like you guys talk about in this book. And for those of you who are watching and listening, the book is Video Podcasting Made Easy, and it's available on Amazon. And if you're watching and or listening, you can go to dealcasters.live, highlighted in the carousel. We have Ross Brand and Kevin Kolbe's to reset the room here, so to speak. Kevin, you talk and you have a historical, like on YouTube, if you go to Kevin Kolbe on YouTube and you pull up all of his phone videos, a lot of what I've learned throughout the years is from you, Kevin, and
Thank
specifically for the phone. And I think a lot of people don't understand, like, oh, they think they need even a HD webcam or a HD camera or DSLR or something that, is going to spit out in 4K. Like, who wants to see these knuckleheads in 4K? Not me. But talk about using the phone, because everyone has a smartphone, right? For the most part. I mean, listen, everybody's buying their 8-year-olds smartphones at this point. But talk about maybe some concepts of using the phone and how somebody might go, well, I didn't even know you could do that.
Yeah. And by the way, if somebody's watching this and they don't have a phone, just use your kid's phone. So there you go.
Nice.
Use the one that you just bought them. That's probably better than the one you have. And it's funny because I still see this. I still see this in comments. I still see people going, well, I don't want to use my phone. And I'll always go, why? And not that they have to answer me, but I've never heard a great response back ever, because we feel like, well, but I can't really do anything with my phone. And then I like to point out, like, the movie director Steven Soderbergh, who now shoots on iPhones, like a big movie director who's been nominated, shoots on iPhones. And you've got Apple that's basically creating cinema cameras in a phone. And it's like, I don't like editing on my phone, but I can shoot my video on there. I can edit on there. I can do my graphics. I can upload it. I can live stream from there. Oh, and by the way, I can still message people. I can buy stuff on Amazon. I can watch your show. There's really nothing. I mean, there's one other piece of gear I have that if I were starting today, if I were starting over today with nothing, the only pieces of gear I would use would be my iPhone, and I have an iPhone 13 Pro, 13, still works, and the DJI Osmo Pocket 3.
Yeah.
That'd be it. I wouldn't go buy any other cameras. Now, people say, well, you have cameras, right? But I've bought things over time. And, 2 or 3 years ago, the phones weren't quite where they are now. And even the mics, I still believe in an external mic, but even the mics have gotten better. Guys, I can't tell you how many times I've used light provided by God for my light. That I use my iPhone most of the time, the selfie camera, the one I can see, to shoot my videos and my thumbnails. And it just works. And I'm not trying to sell anything to Netflix, and I'm not trying to do anything else. I'm producing videos mostly for that. And again, I go back to something I said earlier. I've never ever had a client ever once, no exaggeration, ask me about my gear ever. And part of that is because I think they expect, well, we've either seen something you've done, or we're going to take a leap of faith or something like that, or you've made us feel comfortable. And so they don't really know to ask or care, because they know that it's going to be fine. And so if I show it with my phone or this or that or whatever, Yeah, I'm a big believer in the iPhones, and more and more and more and more, and whether it's Android or whatever. I'm a Mac guy, so I just use iPhones. But I mean, seriously, you can do so much with it, and it's instant. I mean, look, right now, my webcam is a Canon M6 Mark II. I've got a Canon M50 Mark II somewhere in my office. And I love those cameras. I love holding a camera. I love changing a lens. But you know what? Even with those, I've either got to hook it up to my computer to record on my computer to see what I'm doing, or I've got to pop the card out, which I do that some, or my phone. Oh, there it is. You know what? Trim, upload. I'm done. I can go and now fall asleep in front of the TV watching Netflix. So it's just that's kind of my take on it.
That's killer, Ross. I'm changing some gears here because so much about video podcasting and audio podcasting is still very, very siloed. And I think there's a number of maybe audio only podcasters that feel this fear of missing out, right, of video. And then you've got all of these video podcasters, or I should say these people starting podcasts on both, or sometimes just video, just YouTube and calling it a podcast. And we're not going to talk about what is or isn't a podcast because that's like a 3-hour show. But you talk a lot about discovery as being a big factor in video podcasting in the book. And I thought, I kind of wanted to open it up to you and maybe kind of talk about somebody who's maybe hesitant, not necessarily fear of being on camera, but maybe they're just like, why would I need to even do a video podcast? I already have a podcast.
Maybe you don't. It's possible you don't.
Okay.
You have the audience you want, you're making the money you want, whether it's through advertisements or sponsors, or it's through, driving traffic to your business, or maybe it's a hobby and you just enjoy putting out that piece of audio every week. Okay, maybe you don't. But I kind of look at it as it's almost a no-lose thing, right? The worst thing that can happen is you put the video on YouTube and, you don't get an audience there. But the chances of you getting an audience on YouTube are probably greater, and your ability to build it faster as a result of getting some video on YouTube. We're not talking about, as Kevin likes to say, an audiogram is not a video podcast.
Thank you.
Having some video. The video doesn't have to be of the highest quality. It doesn't have to be shot perfectly under the best lighting, but taking the, your headshot, so to speak, your talking head image, having your guest, if there's a guest, either switching to the guest or having you both up at the same time, because so many people now are watching YouTube on television. And when I'm watching YouTube on television, I want to see a moving picture in front of me. I do not want to stare at a still image. I need to be, my brain is in the mode of like watching something, even if it's just watching the same person's mouth go like this for an hour. Okay. So the long and short of it is just try YouTube. You can upload the episode with the video. You still distribute your audio podcast and do all the things you were doing. Yep. The only difference is you upload the video to YouTube. You create a 16:9 thumbnail to catch attention. You put a title on the thumbnail, maybe. You put maybe some words. That's even a debatable thing. You come up with a good title for the video, and then you put it in what's called a playlist, and you name that playlist a podcast. And that's it. A podcast is really just another video playlist, but it tends to be one of talk shows versus, say, a playlist of how-to videos. Although there's no rule that says how-to videos can't be a podcast playlist as well. In fact, I take many of my how-to videos and I distribute them as an audio podcast.
Yeah.
Because in most cases, you can follow along, or they'll follow along until they need to see something, and then there's a link to the video. So they still wouldn't have discovered that video without listening to the audio podcast. But I think in general, video will help them discover your audio podcast or just discover your content better than audio can. Put a search term into Apple Podcasts, and the first 7 results are podcasts that haven't released an episode in 5 years. Okay, put a search term into YouTube, and it's video after video after video after video, current, popular, and maybe your video, if you have it optimized right, or you watch a similar video and then your video gets suggested. So just try it. If it doesn't work for you, there's no rule that you can't go after, 3 weeks or a month, or, I'd say give it a try for 6 months.
Yes.
And just put that video up there. All you're doing is you're turning your video camera on, edit with the video. So you're editing the audio and video at the same time. Because if you're editing your audio, now you're just editing it with the video, and try it, because it might just work for you. It might open doors to a whole new audience, and particularly if you're thinking that you might want to live stream. There are people who did audio podcasts who then went to YouTube to live stream, and they went from having almost no traction to having tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of viewers, because it's a different audience that wants to interact with you. And there's the chat. And Kevin talks in the book about all the different features of YouTube that engage your audience and let them feel more connected to you versus listening to an audio podcast, which it isn't always easy to comment or reach out to the creator.
And let me tack on one other thing too about what you're talking about YouTube. And it's not that I'm down on audio only podcasts. Every morning I get up on the treadmill and I'm listening to podcasts because I don't want to watch and try and walk. I can barely walk without doing anything. But one of the best things that YouTube did for creators, and if this catches flack, I apologize, was sunset Google Podcast and roll it into YouTube Music. Because now that brings a whole new world to podcasters, and people are on YouTube because you can turn those playlists into podcasts that you wouldn't have gotten on Google Podcasts. And it's why now YouTube is like the #1 destination for podcasting.
It's a great point.
Is because now you combine that. So again, you start it, you may not at some point want to keep doing the video podcasting format, which I think can be a lot of different things. But now if you're already on YouTube and you've established that and you're making some connections, it's like, oh, okay. And that, again, Amazon Live is great, and these other platforms are great. But when you look at the power of that, that's money.
Yeah, discoverability is just monstrous, and I think the other thing you got to realize, and Ross, you touched on this as well. It's like, well, when you are discovered, you got to make sure it's something that people want, right? And not a squiggly line over a graphic like we talk about. And so I'll open this up to both of you, because I'm curious to go down this rabbit hole a little bit. How important is it? I understand we want someone that is a new video podcaster to not get like bogged down by all the stuff. You got to do it. You got to plow and get the camera going, get the mic going, and at least get some content up there. I get it. But once you've established that you've got yourself a YouTube channel and you're putting your podcast content on YouTube, and I guess for Spotify if you want to put video there, but it's really small in terms of viewership. But creating content on your YouTube channel with your video podcast that isn't necessarily the entire episode. So like, for instance, when we get an episode, and this episode will be, repurposed forever, we take excerpts from it. We not just shorts, but also, an excerpt of when, Ross is talking about what he just talked about, discoverability. Kevin, when you're talking about the phone, like we're going to have segments, and those are going to be utilized in the proper platform. Because I feel like a lot of times people will take their podcast that they've created with audio and they've got the video and they're just making a Xerox copy of it and uploading it to YouTube. And it's really just kind of the same thing. Whereas like with Conan O'Brien, for example, Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend, the only way you can actually hear the entire episode is the audio podcast. On YouTube, it's just excerpts from that podcast. So the expectation, I guess, maybe for a YouTube viewer or a person that finds something on YouTube is not necessarily sitting down for an hour and watching a video like this. So if somebody's kind of further on down the line and they want to create something with their video podcast on YouTube, is it smart for them to think in the future about, okay, I want to, test it out with some shorts. I want to test it out with a 3-minute excerpt or a 5-minute excerpt, or just let's get this thing going before you even think about it.
Well, I don't know if we're going to agree on this or not.
Okay.
I kind of hope we
Good.
don't.
Good.
And by the way, we didn't agree on everything in the book either.
Good.
I would say that trying to go into short form to go to long form is the wrong way to do it.
Okay.
The belief that people don't watch long form on YouTube, it's kind of like one of those rumors that just won't die. There are mega long videos that are talking head videos that do extremely well. It really comes down to the topic, the value, and I mean, like one of my favorites is micro. And I really, it takes me several days to get through it because I don't usually sit down for an hour and a half and watch something, but I may listen to it and then come and go. So if you have a 45-minute format, do that, and then from there repurpose the parts and pieces. I think personally, this is my take. I think you're doing whoever. I think to try and go to YouTube to use pieces and parts to get you to somewhere else is misusing YouTube. You can do it, but it's also just like trying to go to Instagram so you can get people back to YouTube. People are on their platforms because they're on their platforms. So again, if you're going to do an hour and a half long, 2-hour long video podcast that's got guest or not, make it available to me as audio and video complete. Then you can still chop up parts of it. You could still have shorter, longer form clips if you wanted to, like what you were talking about. You could just do a whole clip about how we wrote the book. You could do a whole clip just on the phone. You could do a whole clip on Ross talking about mics. Those are different pieces of content that can still lead back to the longer conversation. And again, I go back to Mike Rowe, and I realize everybody has different ways of doing this, but if you listen to Mike Rowe's podcast and you watch it, the only difference between the audio and the video is the way he and Chuck, I think is his name, open the audio podcast. They set it up a little bit more for audio, and there's not the commercials, but you'll see the exact break point when they get into it. And I would say once they get into the interview, it's exactly the same interview. So I think I'm going to do just a little bit here and there and then test it out, and then I'll go long. I would say you're training your audience on this short, snackable stuff, and then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, it's an hour long. Go for it. And long form is alive and well on YouTube. Just because shorts became so dominant doesn't mean that long form took a back seat at all. That's my take.
Ross, how about you?
Well, Kevin's totally wrong. No, I actually agree with I actually agree with everything Kevin said. The only thing I would say is, if you're putting the full episode up there, and for whatever reason, because different audiences on different platforms don't always take to certain things, for whatever reason, your podcast on YouTube isn't something people are digging long form. You're not getting a lot of views. You're not getting much watch time. Then maybe you go, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the best segment, the best 3 to 5 minutes. I'm not big on shorts as being a winner anywhere outside of shorts. If you want to be great at shorts, do shorts. But as far as driving traffic, then you have to ask yourself the question, do I make those great 3-minute segments drive traffic to other YouTube videos of mine, or do I send them to the audio podcast? And you probably give a choice in your description. But I think don't use YouTube just to promote the audio podcast. until you've proven that you can't succeed on YouTube as a YouTuber. You can't succeed by putting the full episode on, or then maybe you have a clips channel and the clips channel does great, and then you send people to listen to the full episode somewhere else, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any of the 3,000 podcatchers that are out there. That's the only thing I would say. Otherwise I agree with Kevin 100%.
What are your guys' thoughts? Because I think all of us have definitely seen the power of YouTube, but even like today, we're multi-streaming to multiple channels. But I also know, like our friend Doc Rock, he used to do a lot on Facebook. And he's like, I'm done with Facebook because one, it's my friends and family, and they don't really care. And so he kind of went in all on YouTube. What do you guys think? Do you think that there's a place like, say, on LinkedIn? Because I think, we kind of hit on Instagram a little bit. It's like and maybe it's our behavior based on our age. I'm not going to sit on Instagram and watch somebody talk for an hour on a live video. But to your point, I can watch YouTube on my television. And I might, I may not even watch it all, but I'll at least be listening to it in the background. And what are you guys' thoughts on that?
Well, a year from now, I'm only going to care about the video on YouTube. Now, today, I'm not talking about this video, but I'm talking about if I do a live stream, I'm only going to care in the future of, is it on YouTube? How's it doing on YouTube? If I'm going to share it or embed it, it's likely to be from YouTube. But in the moment, there can be some advantages. There'll be some people that discover it on LinkedIn and chat on LinkedIn. Sometimes, I don't like putting it on Facebook because I feel like Facebook just really doesn't give you much of a chance to have much of an audience. But still, there are people who watch on Facebook, and I don't want to neglect them. I put it on X because, hey, one right person retweets you, and boom, that thing's taken off on X. But also just because X is like kind of a search engine and the paper of record, so to speak, for digital media. So it's like nice to have it in your feed. But in long term, the only place people go to see your back catalog is YouTube. It's the only place people go to search for videos for the most part. I could be wrong on that, but that's my thinking on it, is that, multi-stream if you want to, don't multi-stream. But in the long term, you want to have that content on YouTube. That's where it can get a second and third and fourth shelf life. That's where it can take off a year later. And that's where your video library portfolio sits, that a client can look at it, or, a fan or whatever. So, and plus all the monetization options on YouTube.
Kevin, what are your thoughts?
So I'm going back and forth on multicasting. I used to do it. I can speak for my channel. When I decided to really get serious about YouTube and to focus on YouTube, that's when my channel started growing over time. Is that I didn't try and do all these other platforms because I felt somebody told me to, and I had to be all these other places. Now, granted, I do think trying to move people from one platform to another, can it be done? Yeah. Is it very successful? No, not really. And I know there's always going to be an exception to the rule. There is no video-centric platform like YouTube, period. And I know people go, what about Vimeo? Yeah, but Vimeo is completely different platform. But from a video-centric platform, YouTube is it. YouTube is just it. And so, I think it depends. If you're doing a big event, maybe it makes sense to multicast over every platform that you have access to. But like Ross said, a week later, if it's going to be found, it's going to be found on YouTube. It just is. I had people say to me, I published something on LinkedIn and I can't even find what I published.
Yeah.
And, and,
oh, yeah.
And it's just the way it is. It doesn't mean the other platforms don't have their pros and cons. I'm not, it's not like YouTube is perfect, but I mean, goodness, I don't know that Instagram still knows what it is. You know, I think it's back to maybe photos for a bit. I don't know. And you know, I think you also have to do what you're comfortable with, but also over time you may go, wow, you know, I'm really getting more leverage over here. I'm seeing more happening over here. I know, again, for me personally, when I leaned in 100% on YouTube and quit trying to get somebody to move over here to here to here, that's when YouTube, you know, really worked. And I forgot who it was that said it, but it was kind of like, let YouTube do YouTube for you.
Right.
And it did, because YouTube is all about viewer satisfaction, even over the creator, therefore viewer satisfaction.
Well, and you guys also talk about this in the book, Kevin, is that, you know, there's a community you can build there, right? And so you've done it on YouTube as well, is like, you start like, oh my gosh, this creator's answering me. I had a question and they're like, here, and we've done it on Dealcasters. Somebody's like, hey, does this do this with the flux capacitor included with the XLR or whatever? And you're just like, yes, it does. And here's what something else that might help you. And it's like, that took 2 minutes. And all of a sudden you've got a subscriber for life. And the community aspect, I think, of this whole thing. And as if you're just an audio only podcaster, that's incredibly difficult to build. On those platforms. You have to really go to other platforms in order to try to build that community. It's difficult.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, guys, my camera is dying. Full disclosure, because this is live video, so you probably saw it go black here. This is what I get for not charging my battery properly, and that is not an excuse. I could do this all day. I really did want to touch on a few other things, but we'll have to have you guys back on and sure. Listen, we got to leave some other stuff for everyone else, because in order to get the rest of the stuff, you got to pick up this book that I'm holding up on the screen. For those of you who are listening in the audio podcast, the book is called Video Podcasting Made Easy. Authored by, this is congratulations, by the way, #1 international bestseller, authored by Ross Brand and Kevin Kolbe. We can't believe we got the Mount Rushmore of video podcasting here on Dealcasters. And no, it's not Willie Nelson. It's Kevin Kolbe.
You're going to need a lot of extra granite for this.
Yeah, exactly. Ross, who do people say you look like? Like, everybody has some doppelgangers. Anybody said, hey, Ross, you look like, you know, no?
Not really.
Oh, wow. One of a kind.
He looks like Ross.
He looks like Ross. Awesome. Guys, it's been amazing. Thank you so much again for being on the show. This flew by
Thank you.
This was insane. It flew by so quickly. So much fun. I mean it. You guys are absolute legends, huge influences on both me and Jim. We really appreciate you guys, being on the show, and everybody who has joined us in the chat. We see Richard and James and others, and some unpronounceable people on Twitch, which was always fun. Hi to you, emojis that I can't say. Appreciate you joining. And
before your camera dies, Chris, I
yes.
just want to say congratulations on everything you guys have done with this show
thanks,
and
man.
This brand. It's probably almost 5 years now that you've been doing this.
It's a little over 4, yeah.
You keep evolving, and you keep
thanks, man.
Just really being pioneers and having, what I think is the best show on Amazon Live. So congratulations on everything, and it's an honor to be on your show.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. And any recommendations for a camera battery? I'm all ears for the next book. Camera batteries made easy. Pick it up on Amazon. All right, guys. Take care. And as always, don't fear the gear.